Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley, a show about emerging technologies today that may be the game changers of tomorrow. Despite the rumors about the individual pursuit of money, many people make the decision to work in areas that will contribute to the well-being of specific groups, disadvantaged people, disabled people, animals, the environment, food, health, sports, education, just about every activity and interest in our society. Have you ever wondered how these nonprofit companies operate and what the legal obligations are and how do they pay their bills? My name is Jim Connor. Welcome to Game Changers Silicon Valley. This segment of tonight's show will address the resources available to help nonprofit companies carry out their mission and their purpose and what advantages and disadvantages nonprofit companies encounter. My guests are John Edwards, a counselor at SCORE, and Jonathan Cranch, who has used the SCORE resources and mentoring to build a nonprofit company. John and Jonathan, welcome to the show. John, could you give us an overview of the nonprofit resources and mentorship available at SCORE?
Yes, we at SCORE believe nonprofits are real businesses, and we have as our counselors people with business experience. Nonprofits get started to do work, and the people like doing the work, but they do not know about the management resources. We have a series of seminars, they've been started many years ago, in which every aspect of running a nonprofit is available. Financial, board management, volunteers, grant writing, funding, planning, all of those, and we give them, and they're on our webpage, and we give them to our nonprofit people at a low cost. Our organization was one of the first to actually recognize that nonprofits are businesses, and we have been doing this. We had a contribution from one of our for-profits so that we could indeed do the low cost for nonprofits. What we found when I did it the first time and charged nothing is it was chaos. Again, if you don't have skin in the game, you don't value it. By making the charge for our nonprofits of only $10 for a 3-hour seminar, everything works. And we have had as many as 50 people at a time, but in the time we've been running, we've had over 1,000 people be trained in our nonprofit seminars.
What kind of people, are the people who come to the nonprofit or pursue nonprofits different than the people who pursue for-profit businesses?
In general, they have a different motivation. They are trying to help a particular group or give back to the community rather than make money. We tell them, though, they have to make a profit. We do not like the name nonprofit. It should be a social business enterprise. We have to change the culture because we have to make it so they have to make a profit to be sustainable. And one of the things that we did during the downturn, San Jose City asked us to help some of their key nonprofits. One of the key nonprofits that I worked with, we had to get the financials in order. We had to get a reserve fund so that they weren't hand to mouth. Those are things that are hard to get people that do nonprofits to understand. They keep thinking, nonprofit, don't make money. I had a client today that came in and said, oh, you mean you're supposed to make money? You're supposed to have a reserve? So it's a real change. That's what's different.
John, you have a nonprofit company, but why did you do the nonprofit and what was that experience like?
Well, my wife and I used to go to the San Francisco Design Center to see what was new and realized when there's something new, there's something also discontinued. And she followed the line on that and found there was nothing productive being done with that. Neither one of us could countenance the idea that these beautiful materials, exquisite materials that sell for hundreds of dollars a yard, are just being thrown into the landfill. And she said, I can do better. And so it was all based on, here was a resource that was not being used, and she had a plan for how to use it. And we started from that point, getting a few small quantities and nurturing relationships, which she's very good at, with the showrooms, and starting to provide materials to art teachers in Palo Alto and up to 5 school districts eventually. And I sort of think of it as, find a need and fill it. But if you don't, the need will find you. I was looking for the next phase of my life, and I looked down and realized I was knee deep in it already. So we used to do this out of the home, and it grew from there. We have a very dedicated core of aficionados.
And the recipients then were schools and other people?
It started off with schools, school teachers. Then as our quantities grew, we ran into the times of the year when schools weren't in session, and so we had to develop alternate ways of accessing the community. And from there, we've grown into quite an organization. We have about 6,500 people on the email list. We have 400 people that will come to a monthly event now and make selections of the materials that we have out there, and they support us with donations. If they like what we're doing, they support us.
That's great.
There are people who take advantage of us, and there are people who are very generous. And
is Jonathan typical of the type of nonprofit person
Yes,
you find?
in many ways.
In many ways.
He does also, though, listen. That is hard because it's a mindset change. And he also, we're working on things to actually improve and grow his organization. So he had already started when he came and talked to us. However, there were many things that were not running business-like. That was the key. It was more mom and pop. And what we've been working on is for him to grow his business, strategic plan. One of the services that we provide, members like myself will go to the board and facilitate a strategic plan with the board, follow up with it and help them with the business plan, then follow up with that with the things they need to do.
I see. Good. How did you build your board out? I don't know if people know this, but nonprofits are required to have a board, and it
Correct.
can't be a self-serving like your cousin and your brother. It has to be independent people. How did you go about doing that, and did you leverage John, or did you build the board yourself?
some of both. John has been very much useful, very great resource for us. From the early workshops that John mentioned a moment ago, to the counseling when we decided to become a corporation, a public benefit corporation, and as we followed through on building a structure for the business and preparing a board, or recruiting a board, I guess is the best term. The board initially was, and in fact primarily is still, made up of people who are very passionate about what we're doing. It turns out that we've been blessed with people with a variety of skills that complement each other beautifully, and it's a board that works together very well. So, and John has been very much a coach in helping that. We've had a couple of rough spots, and he's been very, very useful in helping us through them.
What are the other most common problems you do encounter when you start to help a nonprofit?
They don't look at the financials. They don't do a budget.
Yeah.
One of the clients that I've worked with for many years, we actually sat down, they were in trouble, if that's usually the case, and did what we call project-based budgeting, step by step, because they don't do it because they don't think it's important.
People believe, for whatever reason, that a nonprofit means you don't have to follow accounting rules or follow normal financial standards. And
No, and they're even tougher rules.
yeah, the rules are actually tougher, aren't they?
When we talk to a person who's thinking about a nonprofit or for-profit, what I say to them is, the only reason you do a nonprofit is it's the only way you can do it, because it's so much more difficult. The paperwork more difficult, the financial rules more difficult. That's one of the big ones. The other major problem with nonprofits is they are not managing the people in a way that they would counsel them, correct them, or remove them. They just think, oh, I got somebody, instead of, I have the right person.
Jonathan, let me come back to you for maybe your advice to people today who are thinking, haven't done it yet, haven't made the jump to forming a nonprofit. You know, would you encourage them to do it, or what advice would you give them to consider before they make that move?
For me, it was a matter of this was a need that cried out to be filled. And I equate it, I've had an awful lot of help from John. I equate it to going to the beach and creating a sandcastle at the end of the day. And you didn't start it off with a foundation, so it's going to crumble. And now the job is to put a foundation under it without destroying it in the process. And fortunately, that's my interest, the idea of building the organization and building the business more than working on the fabrics and things that we recover. But I think if somebody is driven by something that is deep in their heart, they should pursue it. And I think that the Council of SCORE is very useful in determining whether you want to do it as a nonprofit or do it. I know you used the example of Paul Newman, and he's got a for-profit enterprise, but it supports a nonprofit cause, a foundation, which is another way that we might have done it. But there are tremendous intellectual resources in the person of John and others in SCORE. And I would certainly start with that council.
Great, thank you. John, let's let you tell people how to reach you and the SCORE organization and the website and so on like that.
Okay. The website is www.svscore for Silicon Valley SCORE.org, because we are a nonprofit and we help people. Our counseling is all free and our seminars are low cost.
I'm going to take just a few seconds. You have some materials with you there. Did
I
you
do.
want to just show those really very quickly? We're very low in time. But go ahead.
These are some of the smaller pieces of the materials that we pick up from the Design Center. And we have begun to use these as a takeaway when we go to the Maker Fair, San Mateo County Fair, Earth Day events, farmers markets. And it gives people a chance to see the variety and the quality of the materials that we get. These are not materials that you get at a fabric store. They're exquisite materials. Some of them, as I mentioned earlier, into many hundreds of dollars a yard. And I just thought it might be useful. And at the end of the show, I invite you to take a bundle home.
Well, I will, because I have some friends and relatives who love materials, so I will definitely take one or two.
And we
of
have
them
people
home.
that come to the fairs and things, and they'll take a bundle. The hardest part is picking out which one to take. The organization is fabmo.org.
Very good. FABMO.org.
FABMO.
John Edwards, I want to thank you so much for coming in. You've been delightful tonight and very informative. Jonathan Cranch, thank you for your time and your insights and willingness to share your personal experience in forming a nonprofit and what you were able to get out of it. And I wish you both every success going forward.
And thank you very much.
And thank you.
This is Jim Conner. I'd like to thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Game Changer Silicon Valley. Each week we'll address an area of innovation that may emerge as a game changer of tomorrow. We look forward to your continued interest and participation in upcoming shows. Good night now.